sounds good. Okay.
Yes, so too.
Okay, welcome, viewers, to the Community Wellness Committee of the City of Oneonta. Today is Wednesday, July 3rd. It is 6:02. I am Katie Lepore-Shu. I'm here. Elaine Moser-Campoli. Are you here? Okay, awesome. Bryce Wooden cannot be here tonight, but that is okay. So the minutes looked great. I was the only person who was here, but if you want to look at them.
I read them over
Okay, excellent.
to get prepared for today.
Okay, cool. So, there's no real need for the approval of minutes, so we can just acknowledge that we have seen them and move on. So today we have I would also just like to acknowledge that we have Councilmember John Matheson, who you cannot see at home, is here in his quest to, yes, in his quest to participate and learn as much as possible. So we're happy to have you here. Thank you for coming. So our featured guest is Jennifer Hill from Tobacco Free Communities, who's going to talk to us about steps that we can take to minimize the presence of tobacco in our community, to help protect the health and vitality of our residents and specifically our youth. Does that sound? Yeah. So we have talked a little bit, just for some background, I guess. We have talked a little bit, and Jennifer has shared with me some resources that, including legislation, potential legislation that we could enact. And so I'm excited to bring this to the Wellness Committee, and then the goal would be to, based on our conversations here, possibly see what we can do in Oneonta legislatively to try to improve our community's relationship with tobacco, or the opposite, diminish it. Yes. So thank you, Jennifer, and take it away.
Okay. So I probably brought the same thing. I think I spoke in March at the legislative committee meeting.
Was that legislative?
I can't remember now.
The what?
It was like, long ago.
It's a blur. Oh. No, I'm on the legislative committee. Anyway, welcome to our committee.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing this again.
Well, and thank you for having me, and I don't know where the camera is, but
Oh, it's behind you.
Okay.
So.
Hi.
I love it.
So, Katie and I have talked a bit about specifically the tobacco retail environment. So just to back up, I'm the community engagement coordinator with Tobacco Free Communities, Delaware, Otsego, Schoharie, and I bring the facts of the harmful impact tobacco use and marketing have on our, health of our residents and visitors, and especially kids. In the next year, we'll be talking a lot more about the impact on the environment as well. But to start off with, there's a difference when it comes to rural and urban areas across the country in terms of how tobacco marketing and use impact those communities. So we know that nationally, tobacco use by youth is higher in rural areas than it is in urban areas, and that includes in this area too. So like the first page, and there's a map on the flip side, but it's a list of all the counties in New York State, and this is from 2022. Wait, that's saying 2021. So, yeah, this is 2021. This is adult smoking rates by county, so 18 years and older. And so New York State's average in 2021 was, I think, like 12.6%. So that's the average, but the rural counties tend to be much higher than that. And so if you look at Otsego County, it's 18.3. And that's actually an increase from when I first started working. So I think the figures were from 2017, when I first started working. And it was like 16 point something in Otsego County.
Okay.
And then Schoharie County is the highest of the tri-county area that I, do my work in, at almost 20%. So, it's significantly above average. And in rural areas, so the tobacco industry spends over $9 billion a year on marketing, and most of that goes into the tobacco retail environment. And that is, we know it's like aimed at children, so that they grow up thinking it's a normalized and desirable thing to do. And so some of the like state laws we've had recently have to do with, reducing advertisement that youth can easily see, especially like on routes to schools. So there's restrictions on outdoor advertising in areas like that. There's still, indoor advertising inside tobacco retailers. And in rural areas, youth will go into convenience stores a lot. That's usually the kind of store they'll go into, or a discount place. And so, they're going to be exposed to tobacco products more than, and the advertising there more than in urban areas where, you might have like a variety of places you'll go in, to take your kids in. So, that's something to take into account. The next page is on youth rates of tobacco use from 2022, and the good news is it has gone down across the board with different types of tobacco products, so that's good news. I mean, that's statewide. E-cigarettes are still the most popular thing that youth use in high school, and we're learning much younger too. The big reason why there's been such a push to restrict flavored e-cigarettes, so in New York State, all flavored e-cigarettes are effectively banned from being sold, but there have been loopholes in the laws, so it's been kind of easy to get around them. And nationwide, I think it's something like, like 90% of teenagers who vape, they vape flavored e-cigarettes. So, so nationwide, there are restrictions on e-flavored cigarettes, but the tobacco industry got around it by making disposable tobacco products, disposable vapes, that escaped like the restriction part. And they're also really terrible for the environment. So anyway, one of the main thing for me to talk about here is, basically local governments can make policies, if they decide to do so, to curb the density of tobacco retailers, or to rezone, or put in, different zoning laws that, maybe keep them, if there are any new tobacco retailers, to keep them further away from schools or where youth tend to go. And there can also be other policies that help reinforce like state law. So, like the city of Oneonta could enact a policy that bans all flavored, e-vapes, just to help reinforce the state law.
I was wondering that if we had the option to basically strengthen
Yes.
state or existing state legislation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. And, so menthol flavored cigarettes are still being sold, the city of Oneonta could, if it wanted to, restrict the sales of that.
Okay.
So, the town of Bethlehem has put in a retail policy that curbs, it's on here, I think it's the last page. it curbs, the density, it tries to reduce the density of, tobacco retailers. And so, and they charge fees so that it will also help pay for the enforcement of the policy.
Okay.
So I sometimes, I don't know, since you guys are the experts at this, I sometimes glaze over when I'm reading like how they do it. But, let's see, believe.
Okay.
Yeah, they're only allowing, so many new, tobacco retailers to, to be allowed to start up. And, their annual fees due every year. And I think if a tobacco retailer closes down, I don't know if it can be replaced. I don't know, but I don't know if it's quite that restrictive, but it's close to it.
Some kind of caps, it sounds like.
Yeah, so-
Limitations on that.
Yeah, exactly. So, there are different ways to do, retail policing. So, yeah, caps, the licensing fees, which, Bethlehem has done like hand in hand. You can regulate the location of tobacco retailers, restrict the types of businesses that sell tobacco products. So like the city could even enact a policy where, maybe just smoke shops, specifically smoke shops,
Right,
sell the products.
yeah, so I was just thinking, we have, something that we're considering at our next legislative committee meeting is a neighborhood market zoning revision that would remove tobacco products from the definition of a neighborhood market, which can be located in a residential area. So that's kind of, just an example of what you were saying, that like a certain type of place that will no longer, it's not considered a neighborhood market and therefore it's known out of residential areas.
Right.
Yeah, so that's interesting.
Yeah, and,
A little bit more purposefully with tobacco.
Yeah, something of its own, it sounds like, would
Yeah.
have more weight.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right,
that's
right.
a start.
And different convenience stores have also set things up a little bit differently. Like Stewart's does keep, like, they tend to have their tobacco products like away from, especially where the ice cream is and things
Right.
like that, which
Right.
is great. But, if you go into, your average convenience store, you go in and the products are displayed behind the
Is
counter.
not to cut you off, but that's such a good example. When they opened, I was so bummed because their food is so good, but you have to walk past all the paraphernalia and cigarettes and things to get to the food.
Right, and honestly, that's what I noticed first, and I don't think it's just because of my work, it might have been, but I don't.
No, it's very prominent, yeah.
And, in terms of like commercialized, tobacco products, they tend to be wrapped in shiny, colorful packaging that mimics like other, like products like candy and gum, and, I know that even e-cigarettes now, they have embedded video games in them. And it has to do with like, I think it
Insidious.
I think it has to do with like
That's
how
so messed
often you vape and, like different lights will light up. Yeah, so,
So it's added reinforcement.
I hate it so much.
It-
I am
you
so
know,
upset.
and it's
I haven't heard of that either.
yeah, I just,
Oh my goodness.
and honestly, it was because I was watching a true crime YouTube program and the main guy was vaping and I noticed his vape was like lighting up all the time and I'm like, oh my gosh, like wow, that's, and then someone told me, yeah, they actually have embedded video games in them now, so it's a strange new world.
I guess that some of that is figuring into why there's an environmental impact as well, like with the materials used, in that.
Yeah, so, for cigarette butts, it's the most littered item in the world,
Yeah.
and they don't really biodegrade. And then e-cigarette parts don't at all biodegrade, and there's no real system to dispose of them safely right now.
Right.
And so people who use them, especially disposable vapes, they'll throw them in the trash, which is bad. I mean, they could catch fire in there, like that's not a safe disposal, but like they don't know, and there's no sort of real real safe way to do it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, does a safe method exist for disposal?
There are safe methods, they're kind of hard to set up, but right now, I forget what the name of the program is, but it's a federal, well, maybe it's a state program too, where they collect drug paraphernalia every year, like people can just go and dispose, those things, no questions asked kind of thing, and you can do the same with vapes, although I don't know if you can do it everywhere. I think you might be able to do it around here. So anyway, these policies have to do with especially helping to prevent youth from ever initiating tobacco use because, often once they do, they get very quickly addicted to the nicotine, and then, it's still so very normalized that, it makes it harder to quit. And if you start by the time you're 18, you have a much harder time trying to quit later on. And the average age, at least for starting to smoke, is 13, still nationwide. So, a lot of it is that and e-cigarettes, are crammed with nicotine, they have very, very high concentrations of them. I'm just trying to think of, so, I also just, as a resident of Oneonta, I look at Main Street and I feel like there are quite a few tobacco retailers on it, and it's just sort of something to consider in terms of people who want to go downtown. Do parents want to take their kids, or do kids feel like they want to go there? I mean, I think for the most part, they do, because there are different types of shops, but I just think it's something, for the council to consider.
Totally, and I think the impression too of visitors, right, is if every 10 feet there's a beer store and a smoke shop, then that's what the impression of our town is, so. Yeah, please.
Who's selling cigarettes in downtown?
Well, the market, there's, the Speedway is on Main Street, right on the edge of
Yeah, but on the main part of downtown, I think it's only that one grocery store, and it's a new one.
Well, there are a few smoke shops.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's smoke shops.
Oh, there's smoke
on that,
shops.
Yeah.
and I'm not sure what else.
There was a vape shop right next to the Oneonta Theater.
Oh, yeah,
That's
I
500.
believe they are still there.
I don't
Yeah.
think they sell cigarettes though, do they?
They do not, and they
E-cigarettes.
don't sell any flavored vapes, they comply with the law, but,
A legal drugstore sells cannabis that they can smoke, so. That's another.
oh, you mean the one down near the highway?
Dosha.
Yeah.
Goshen, yeah. And we don't deal with the
Yeah.
cannabis issue. But, it does go to, this would be more of a municipal policy about tobacco use on Main Street or, the sidewalks as
Right.
well. I have talked to a few different, families with infants who don't like having to go down Main Street and have to breathe in, or,
Yes,
that there's
this is
smoke.
a very
Of-
real thing.
Whatever the product might be,
When I had a
whatever.
tiny baby, I would hold, his head into my body, and now that he's older, I'm like, don't breathe for a second. When we walk by somebody,
Mommy
so it's
told
a
me not
very,
to
very
breathe.
real yeah, hold your breath. So, yeah, well, so that was one thing, that brings me to one thing that I was wondering, which is, the Clean Indoor Air Act regulates how far away from the entrances to restaurants you can smoke.
Gosh, I should know this. All I know about the Clean Indoor Air Act is that it bans, use inside.
But
I
there's also,
does it also have a ruling on how?
so there's an outdoor seating section of it, and it has something to do with, it's based off of the idea that bans smoking indoors, which is that a partition does not protect people from
Right.
secondhand smoke, so
Right.
you can have a designated smoking section in an outdoor seating area, but it can't be more than 25% of your outdoor seating, and it has to be more than, I wanna say it's only 3 feet away from the door. And so that's one thing that I was wondering about is if the city is able to like strengthen the Clean Indoor Air Act by regulating, a further distance from the entrance to
That's-
restaurants and businesses.
That's a good question. I would have to look into that, and I've gone to, I've talked to various restaurant owners about, making their, having an official policy that makes their outdoor area tobacco-free.
Mhm.
And, I mean, so far, most restaurants, they might not have a policy, but they basically don't really allow it.
Yeah, that's good.
But yeah, I'd have to look into that, because I'm not, that's a good question.
Yeah, thanks. I'm just thinking, about places where, and we have several of them right on Main Street, where people will just literally like step outside the front door and
Bars.
smoke.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
predominantly
mostly.
the bars, yeah. If that would be a way to solve that problem, make downtown a little bit more family friendly, if there wasn't quite as much secondhand smoke to breathe in, because that is a consideration I know for me and I know for other parents, so.
Well, and, I mean, I certainly grew up, because of my age, I certainly grew up with the thinking that, if you're outside, smoke doesn't bother you, if you're walking just quickly by, but that's not true.
Right.
And, especially for anyone who has, some sort of respiratory ailment or chronic disease, or,
Right.
is
Young
little,
or
or,
old.
yeah, or, maybe just doesn't wanna have to ever walk through that.
Right,
The majority of people don't use tobacco, so it's just something to keep in account.
Yeah.
And, while we don't do one-on-one cessation counseling and things like that, the New York State Quit Line does, we totally understand that it's, it's very hard, because it's a very strong addiction. But, sometimes changing the environment can help those who would like to quit, push them over the finish line too.
Cool.
And most, well, at least for smokers, most adult smokers wanna quit.
Really?
It's like, yeah, it's an average of 70%.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's-
but it's,
that's
it's just,
interesting
yeah.
statistic.
yeah,
It's just hard to
It's-
do.
it's hard.
I mean, it's really hard.
it takes an average of 7 attempts.
Wow.
But every attempt you make gets you a little bit, like,
Cool.
supports, your next attempt, so,
Nice.
so.
Okay.
There are little bits of good news about it, so, yeah.
Yeah, well, I know that at the table that you had at Pride Fest with the facts behind you, so many of those were just like, what? I mean, I think there is a certain amount of public education that needs to go on, in terms of like why, because like you said, especially, I mean, I used to walk down to the Palace Cigar Store by myself and get cigarettes from my dad. So there are people, I'm 37, so it's not that long ago that the attitude about smoking was very different.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so, and I think the other thing that we had talked about is, changing the environment to try to make it a healthier one without shaming people who choose
That's what it's all about.
or want to quit but can't, or, so
Right,
creating balance there so that it's not that they're not welcome, but just that, there is cleaner air for the majority of the
yeah,
community.
and what we always say is, if a business or municipality makes outdoor areas tobacco-free, it just means you can't use tobacco in that area. It doesn't mean like, people are, you have to give up smoking and, your rights are taken
Right.
away. It just means, please don't do it there. And again, like, it's all about, public health, preventing kids from becoming
Right.
tobacco users
Which is-
and having shortened lifespans because of it.
Yeah. That's a huge thing for me because I was thinking, the thing that really kind of pushed me more into talking about this is that it seemed like for a little while there, we had a smoke shop just opening like one a week. I don't know what happened, but there was one that opened just around the corner here on Elm Street at Nina's, and I just thought to myself, like, there weren't this many when I was growing up, and despite, going to the Palace cigarette store and buying cigarettes for my dad, like, it wasn't the prevailing culture, really, and kids in our community who are growing up and they see smoke shops everywhere, like you said, it's like, as the mix diminishes and that's all they begin to see, then it becomes normalized and it's not, the exception. It's like that's what people do. So I just don't want to see us slide, back in that direction and ultimately harm our community's kids. So that for me is like the big driving force, is to change the culture in our community kind of in the opposite direction.
I think also, like you had mentioned some resources, like promoting some of those things, because if you said like that there's that many people who want to quit and, each of those attempts helps get them a little closer, like that quit line, different things like that would be good to keep in mind, to, help those people who want that extra step to get, past that line.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah, exactly, and we, if we're tabling at an event, we always have, quit line resources, and then like the Wilmot Cancer Institute has an excellent cessation program too, that, some of the cessation programs are online, and for smoking in particular, but the quit line has a really good drop the vape, texting program, that's aimed especially at teens and young adults.
Cool.
And so, they can get, they can text for advice and a counselor and everything, so.
Oh, that's good.
We have a really
It's good to
good,
have that kind of backup too, I think.
Yeah.
yeah, the quick line's
Texting is
really.
much easier for a lot of people. Yeah,
Easy entry point for a lot. Yeah.
totally.
So yeah, and again, e-cigarettes, I mean, that's become, an epidemic, and, again, like there are obviously all sorts of things with those that are really attracting youth, and, the problem is that they do have high concentrations of nicotine, and, vape is not really a great term because it suggests it's just water vapor, but it's aerosols, and it varies like what the ingredients are, but they tend to have toxic ingredients in them as well.
Wow.
So, and it hasn't been going on long enough for us to really know the long-term, consequences of it, but we know there are some already, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think about the fact that when I was in high school, obviously I knew a lot of people who smoked both tobacco and cannabis, but we didn't do it in the bathroom, right? That used to be a thing, then it wasn't a thing, and now there's like a sign that says, please don't vape in the bathroom, and you have to like sign in and out because it's so prevalent, but also it's less, like the odor is not as offensive, it's less noticeable, and so you just think about how that has, again, like I feel like the culture sort of shifted away from cigarettes, and then just as that was beginning to happen, they were like, here's this new option, and it tastes good, and it smells good, and it looks like fun, and there's a video game on it,
And that's
So,
a video.
right, so,
Well, and just so you know, I mean, this is out of your purview, but I mean, schools are really struggling with
Yeah.
it. It's very easy to hide vapes. In fact, they're being marketed so that kids can hide them easily. And, we have a reality check youth engagement
Yes.
program. And so one of our students, Bryson, he's going to be a senior this next year at Oneonta High School, and they have faculty and staff guarding the bathrooms to try and, prevent kids from going in and vaping, and detectors have been installed, but they're getting around that too.
Yeah.
It's amazing, like, the creativity that is going into trying to avoid detection. And then, we also hear stories about, students who are busted for vaping and their stuff is taken away. They go through pretty acute nicotine withdrawal, and so then there might be behavioral issues because of that, because it's
Right.
acute withdrawal. So, again, that's not in this purview, but I do think policies, even if they seem incremental, that can reduce the retail environment, that can make outdoor areas, especially where, the public gathers, all of that can help reduce, tobacco use overall.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, just changing the community culture a little bit.
It's about changing the environment,
Yeah.
so.
One of the main strategies that's been identified by the many iterations of this community in collaboration with the chief of police is that treating some community illnesses, let's put it that way, as adults can be kind of like whack-a-mole, and that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it, but that a more successful strategy long-term for our community is engaging our youth in healthy habits, so that they grow up into people who don't make the choices that adults in our community have been making. So I think that this fits right in, with creating a climate in our community that supports kids and, doesn't allow them to get into an early addiction cycle. So in terms of, and I think it's helpful, to talk about, we don't have any, jurisdiction or anything over the school districts, but knowing that they are also obviously working on that as well and thinking about the big picture of our community's kids is really helpful. So, I'm sorry.
Oh, I just wanted to say, just in case people don't know, like if someone who has like a substance abuse problem, let's say with, opioids or heroin or something like that, if they're also using a tobacco product and they're going through recovery and they also quit tobacco use, they're less likely to relapse.
Really?
Yeah.
I've always thought it was the opposite, so thank you for telling us that.
Yeah, I think, understandably, there's long been this thing of like, well, don't also cut off like the tobacco use on top of like what they're,
Gotta do something,
what they're going through. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I think that's been through like long-term research.
Wow,
Yeah,
cool.
so just putting it out there.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
So from a wellness perspective, I wanna, continue to talk about this now, and then just thinking about ways that we can move this into a legislative, area. It sounds like we can discuss zoning that limits, the occurrence of who can sell tobacco, how close they can be to each other. And I do have some of the examples that you sent to me, so I'll forward those along. And then,
Yeah, and I can send anything
Oh,
over
good.
email
Okay.
as well.
okay, sweet. Yeah, I'm sure you can probably have a lot.
Yeah,
It
it'd be good to
sounds,
see some other examples, because I know that there's a lot of others, areas where we could make impacts too, so, yeah.
yeah. We can restrict sales of certain products within the community. Does that sound accurate? Like you said, we could strengthen the state ban on flavored vapes.
Yeah, and you could put
Segment menthol cigarettes.
I mean, the municipalities, local governments can pass laws that, restrict the sales of like menthol flavored cigarettes or flavored cigars or things like that,
Okay.
you know? Laws that haven't been passed by the state.
Okay, but they're basically laws that are an extension of what the state.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And I mean, of course, it means that, you know, someone can go buy those products in a different municipality,
Sure.
but, you know, it's also a way of saying, okay, you know, we don't have to wait for the state or the federal government to restrict the sales, you know, we can do it now if we want to, and depending on what your thought process is behind a policy, like it could be, okay, you know, we as a municipality just want to have it like that, you know, this is part of how we're approaching like community wellness.
Okay. Cool,
It depends what you all want.
yeah,
You know, we always recommend that in creating policies, and of course, like the Common Council does this, but mostly with businesses, just to encourage them to, you know, state why they want to implement this policy. Like, what is it, what outcome are they after?
yeah, okay. Say why, I'm writing notes. So we can limit and restrict both, shops themselves and products.
So like the idea of having like a cap or
Yeah.
something, yep.
Yeah, in certain zones and within proximity to schools and playgrounds and the Boys and Girls Club.
Yeah,
and
so
things like that.
zoning and everything, yeah.
Mhm. We can, and then if we restrict it to certain zones, we can still even limit it further by, it wouldn't necessarily be limiting, but it's more of a control by having more like the fee policy that the, town of Bethlehem
Yeah,
has.
it sounds like it's basically like permitted, right?
Yep.
Yep.
And
Okay.
we have, like, we just talked about this actually in legislative committee, we were going through the fee schedule, and like, there used to be
Yeah.
fees for like having an arcade. So we can certainly, like,
So this is one that could be, you know, considered too then.
yeah, yep. Certain products, sorry, I'm just taking
And-
notes.
And just so you know, like, well, factually, we know that, the research says that in rural areas, trying to curb the number of tobacco retailers isn't quite as effective as in cities because, you know, again, like, a lot of the stores used especially will typically go into our convenience stores. So, you know, even if, like, maybe you cap a certain number in a given area, you know, they'll probably go to another one. But, you know, with Oneonta, there's a little bit of density here since we're a big metropolitan area. So, you know,
Yeah.
it's just those things
We're
to
in the
keep.
double digits.
Yeah, we're totally in the double digits, yeah. And then, I can also just send you a link or multiple links if you want. So the Public Health Law Center is based in Minnesota, and they basically are our policy arm. So they do lots of research on commercial tobacco use, marketing, whatever in New York State. And so that's where I'm getting a lot of the information on rural versus urban tobacco use. And they have a lot of information on what different municipalities have passed in terms of retail policy.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see that comparison too, because if there are big differences, to see what would work, what would be most effective,
Mhm.
you know, for a city of our size.
Right.
So, opening it up to both Elaine on the committee and also Don, as you sit on the council, what, from a community wellness perspective, understanding the legislative options that we have, like, what are your initial thoughts? Like, do you think this is something that council should pursue? If so, what would you consider? What would you not consider?
Well, the things that you said, the zoning and, regulations and fees make sense.
Okay.
When my father smoked Camels, unfiltered Camels, and one time I was telling him, it's probably not good for you, and say, I started smoking in the army, they gave us cigarettes.
Right.
So I did some math, so unfiltered Camels were kind of short. So I calculated that took 10 drags per cigarette, and he smoked a pack a day, 20 cigarettes. That's 200 times a day he was putting toxins in his lungs. And then if you multiply that for a year, 73,000 times a day, it didn't convince him to quit.
Yeah.
But think about that. If you're a smoker and you smoke a pack a day, 73,000 times a day, at 73,000 times a year, you're sucking in smoke.
Yeah.
It's not a good idea. That might be a statistic that could, one of many statistics that you can use to convince young people not to start.
Oh, right, and then, I mean, with e-cigarettes, the amount of nicotine,
Right, it's
like
a
in
higher
one pod
It's
is
a higher,
much,
you bring in more nicotine per puff.
yeah.
And in fact, did you ever see those people exhale? It's like a cloud.
Yeah.
It's huge. You put all of that in your lungs, you're stupid idiot.
Well, and I mean, the other thing, I mean, I try not to heap on like all the grim statistics, but, like not only have people been, smoking and bringing it in themselves, but then they're also breathing in secondhand smoke and,
And I think it's people of all intelligences that, will use these products, because, especially like you said, when they get hooked as young people, they're gonna grow up, addicted to a product, unfortunately, so.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, in my lifetime, certainly, as I was growing up, the big campaign, well, I hate to say against smoking, but it was against smoking, and just, then like the knowledge coming out that secondhand smoke exposure was really dangerous. And so, meanwhile, you're like, dang, like, okay, I've been.
The most
I
effective
grew up in
thing,
a
the most
family.
effective anti-smoking thing was teaching children the dangers of it, because I don't remember what the numbers were, but when I was a kid, 70-80% of adults smoked, something like that, and now, what is it, 12%, something?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
It was 18. I can
Yeah,
tell
so
you,
it's,
like,
what's that?
I was gonna say, I was born in a family where my mom smoked throughout my pregnancy, her pregnancy with me, throughout her pregnancy with my brother, and then they quit, and then my sister was born, and, so.
Well, my mother told me
Start
she was
one.
mad at the doctor when I was being delivered, because the doctor smoked all her cigarettes in the delivery room.
Yeah.
Both of
But then,
my
you know,
Both of my
Yeah.
siblings
There's
have asthma.
the old
from
joke,
growing up
it's
with
not
my
hard to
dad
quit smoking, I've done it hundreds of times.
Right,
Huh?
yeah, exactly, yeah.
So, yeah, they're,
I think it's educating the young people, that's the most effective
yeah.
thing we can, and this, owning on to schools is very good about that.
Mhm.
Well,
Sure.
so, in the stat shot on youth tobacco use, I mean, it's 2.1% among high school students for smoking.
That's pretty
So-
good.
It's pretty amazing, right?
My kid who just left 7th grade and going to 8th grade says she sees people every single day on her way home from school vaping.
Really?
Yeah, but vaping.
Oh, yeah, every single day she sees
I've
kids vaping.
seen youngsters doing it, but I haven't seen it, well,
She's around a lot of them when they're leaving
Yeah.
school, so.
they're
Yeah, and
in
it's
the
7th
woods or
grade.
something on
Yeah.
the way home.
Yeah, and kids her age.
Yeah, well, and it's
Wow.
even,
She's
and
like,
like.
Oh, and I know that it's starting even earlier,
That's
but
not good,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
gotta be,
Yeah, as the mom of a 5-year-old, I'm really terrified for
yes.
this entire conversation and what it might mean for my life.
Yeah, and while they may be doing education in school, there's certainly things we can do to improve that, community wellness, piece of it, because even when we talk about those kids leaving school, not witnessing them on the school grounds vaping, she's seeing them in the park, in other areas.
yeah, they don't do it
Yeah,
on.
where they're not supposed to do it.
Exactly, and I know there are signs out, and I'm sure they know that they're not
Yeah,
supposed to
you
do
know
it.
Well, the entrance into, Wilbur Park,
Yes,
from the parking lot of the elementary, the high school
Yep.
and junior high.
that's exactly where she walks home.
All of the cigarette butts that you see.
Well,
lots
that's
of
the
cigarette butts.
spot. It has been probably since before I was
Yeah.
in school, back, 20
Because
years
it's off
ago.
school grounds. and
Yeah,
it's-
but you know what, it's still illegal in the park, so I
It is.
I feel like.
Yeah, but there's no enforcement, so.
Now I've got like my mom hat on, y'all need to stop. When I was 17, I was like, yeah, fine.
Yeah.
Now, I'm like, oh, you guys. Anyway, okay, great, so it sounds like there is, generally sort of a favorable opinion of looking into what we could do, for zoning to limit, the tobacco environment in our community, and also, that's all kind of included. I have sort of a little roadmap here of what we could do.
Yeah, just another thought on that, like when we were talking about the zoning, you had also mentioned before specifically advertising.
Oh,
So I think that's something else to consider, right? Because I think that could be considered separate, from, because I'm even thinking like the outside, there's the outside advertising. Because a lot of the gas stations have stuff all over the outside, right?
Yeah.
As well as the inside, so those are maybe just some other things that we should look at too.
Yeah. Do you have any, I think that's a really great point, like, do you have any advice on how we might legislate around, minimizing cigarette advertising or?
Can you
tobacco
advertise cigarettes in the store?
Yeah.
In the store, you can advertise.
Inside?
Well, in the convenience stores and everything, yeah.
I don't think we we don't have the authority to regulate that, do we?
Probably like a signage thing.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm wondering, especially on the
Inside the
outside,
store,
like if you're talking about
outside
the.
the store, we could maybe.
Oh,
but-
Number
Yeah.
of signs, placement of signs,
Okay,
that kind of deal, but content is.
okay,
Interesting.
good to know. Okay, because I was
So-
thinking about what you were saying with the school, and the zoning with that, but okay.
Yeah.
So we may not have as much, reach with that, but, okay.
And I mean, I would, we can help out with this too, but, I would also just encourage talking with convenience store owners because, they may not all be opposed to this. They may have ideas on, what might work or.
I don't think that's gonna work, because if it's a private owner, like the guy on Main Street, he made a conscious decision to sell cigarettes, if that's what they're selling in there, so you're wasting your breath. I
But
think.
actually,
And if it's like.
Well, no, but it can,
Yeah.
it has worked.
If it's,
in other
if it's,
places.
and if it's like, Marabito or Stewart's, that's a corporate thing, I don't think the local manager has any control.
But Apple Express is family owned, and I live right across the street, so we have a pretty good relationship with them.
oh, yeah, they're local
Yeah.
people.
Do they sell cigarettes?
Oh, you bet.
Yeah, the one that replaced.
I know the
Redlands.
families, they're very nice.
Yeah,
people.
I'm across from the other one, the one that has the gas as well, but they're both owned by the same person.
Uh-huh.
Like they also have
I'll check
one
with
in
Gary.
like, on the way to Cooperstown.
Yes,
They're very nice people.
they are very nice, so I'll chat with
Yeah,
Gary next time I see him.
I'm not 100% sure, I'd have to look this up, but I think convenience stores actually make a lot of their profits from selling packaged food
They
Okay,
sell gas, cigarettes, and beer, that's what they sell.
and
Well,
packaged.
so.
And junk food.
In terms of like the inside and what is like allowed, that can be regulated by zoning. So I think maybe we talked about this, that we might be able to actually zone that I know that this is true, that we can say that a specific percentage of their sales or square footage is
Oh,
like not
gotcha.
to exceed. And I think, did we talk about how we could say that, they actually had to switch for example, the United Food Market, like switch the food and tobacco?
I think we may have talked about that.
I don't know if I don't remember whether there was actually anything that we could do there, but I do know that the percentage thing is a real thing. Because in the neighborhood market legislation, there's a I wanna say, well, we're regulating the percentage of their square footage that can be used for like table seating. And then I wanna say prepared foods, like it has to be a certain percent of prepared foods or something like that. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I know that that's in there, so I think that could be
You
tweaked,
can do
right,
that.
for this.
Right.
Do you, is that, do you have like a draft form of legislation?
I do,
or-
for the
Okay,
neighborhood markets.
is it
Yeah.
online or?
Maybe, is it online?
It would be in the previous legislative committee packets.
Okay,
The
yeah,
Last couple of meetings.
I can send it to you if you want.
Okay, that'd be great.
Yeah.
And then I can find out more about the really good questions and points you're raising.
Thank you. So right now, part of the kind of the impetus for this neighborhood market co-provision is that like the Area 51 smoke shop and the what is now very different Hometown Deli are technically neighborhood markets because under the definition, there is no specific ratio of anything, and it lists specifically tobacco and alcohol products in the definition of neighborhood market, and so you could have 100% tobacco and alcohol products, which is what we have now at some of
Area
these
51
places.
is the one on Ford.
Yeah, in the, like, where the
Yeah.
parking lot is, and they had the really bright
Yeah,
sign with an
yep.
alien on it, that my 5-year-old was like, wow, what's that cool place? And I was like, nope. So, that sign got taken down because it didn't meet our code, but,
Right, yeah.
but, you know, that's, I guess, another example too, of like, now I have to put up a way less interesting to 5-year-old sign, which is something that's good, for me, anyway. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna send you, that legislative committee, the MU, or the neighborhood markets thing. And we are gonna look into maybe what other places are doing to address some of this
Yeah.
stuff, using the public health law
Yeah.
center is a really great
They're awesome.
resource.
Yeah, and you should also feel very comfortable contacting them, you know,
Okay.
anytime you want. But I will send you like some of their research and different lists of,
Okay.
they have a list of municipalities in New York State that have passed
Great.
retail policies.
And so with the general consent of the committee, can I move some legislation onto the legislative committee? Or do you guys wanna work on the legislation here and then present something to the legislative committee? How do you wanna do it?
Work on it together.
Okay. Yeah, all right, so we'll bring it back to this committee. That sounds good, cool. So in the meantime, our homework can be looking up, you know, things that we think might work for our municipality and kind of doing all the back and forth of information sharing that we are gonna do.
I'll jot it down. I'll take it into too.
Oh, cool.
And thank you very much for
Oh,
all this
yeah.
information. It's
Oh,
really
you're
helpful.
welcome. Thank you for inviting me to share it, and, you know, makes me happy.
Yay. Good. Well, thank you for
It's part of
coming.
my job.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we are complete on the tobacco, yeah, we'll let you enjoy your evening. See everyone out there.
Thank you.
I mean, you can stay if you want to.
I'm getting hungry.
I
To be
know,
honest.
And
You need to
so.
go out and get a smoke.
Yeah, you have my permission, no. So, okay, so we agreed kind of beforehand that, we're gonna wait for the full committee and a couple of other special guests to talk about topics B and C, and I have some, info on the community locker program that I wanna send along, that I made a note here, so I will do that. But so, Councilmember Mosher Campoli and I, got together on Saturday, and we were talking about a million things. Yeah, I'll let you talk about.
So one of the things that I brought up was, the Department of Human Rights has a hate and bias reporting form that they have created. And it was something that, created to allow reporting of hate and bias incidents throughout the state. And then those incidents would be brought to the committees that are, local. Like I'm on the Mohawk Valley unit. for the hate and bias prevention units. So it is a new reporting form. I don't know how many reports they've actually received so far, but I do know that they have received some. There's an online reporting form. There's a phone number that people can call if they are more comfortable doing that. And so I wanted to get that out and make sure that people knew about that. I was also going to send it to Shannon so that she can share with the Human Rights Commission. So yeah, just trying to get awareness out about that, maybe more people.
So the state collects data on that, or do they follow up?
Well, the purpose is that then these incidents can be reported to local units that can then, look into them or, follow up as needed.
Cool.
But it is also definitely so that they can start to collect some more data and information about what's happening.
But hate and bias is not against the law.
No, but they want to know when it's happening.
Right.
Well, and the topic that I think specifically got us here is housing discrimination,
Yeah.
which is against the law. So
What is against the law?
housing discrimination.
Yeah.
So, I think that was a really great question of like, what do you do with this information?
Right.
Do we follow up with, local, people to make sure that this isn't happening in our community going forward? So that's a good question.
Discrimination is against the law. It's hard to, do anything. People hate and have biases, and a bias, sometimes it sounds like a negative thing, but I have a bias towards strawberry ice cream and a bias against chocolate ice cream, and I'm not making it up. Bias has many meanings, the word has many meanings.
Mm-hmm.
So it's collecting the statistics is a good thing. Acting on it, I don't know how you do that unless there's violence related to it.
Yeah, and actually, if you go to the form, when you go to the form, they immediately say if you are the victim of a crime, if you face some sort of violence, that you should report that.
That's
To the police,
absolutely necessary. That's
And then
very
this would
important.
be a secondary step if that was it. But like you said, some of these things are not gonna be things that are against the law, but they may be things that people feel that they need support with. And, or things that they at least want the state to know about in their tracking purposes.
Right, like, it's terrible that people become, openly anti-Semitic, but you can never outlaw anti-Semitism. And many other things.
Yeah, one of the things that the hate and bias prevention units, again, from that prevention point, they're trying to put out positive messages of community building. Like right now they have a public arts program that they're working on. And so there is funding to back up these efforts as well. The hate and bias prevention units are still, they're a little over a year old. So the program is still a newer program, and it's really coming into formation what each council is doing, because each unit is acting, independently for what is best for their region. But this reporting form is throughout the state.
And it feels just like sort of a connection point to other organizations like the ACLU and things like that, where, it's, if someone discriminated against me, and wouldn't rent me an apartment, which happens, right, to, people of many different backgrounds, I might not contact the ACLU, but I might contact the Hate and Bias Prevention Council, who might say, wow, that's really happening a lot in this area, and then it kind of becomes like a bridge.
Discrimination is against the law, and it should be.
Yeah.
That's a very different thing.
And that is what they're hoping to do, eventually, once, more information is gathered, that that way, if there's a community that is demonstrating a need, that they can address that need, with the community. Individually, they can reach out to individuals, who may need support as well. So.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you for sharing that. And you had mentioned, and I'm gonna butcher this because I just wrote shorthand, Otsego Safe.
Yes, it is Otsego Safe. And, I apologize, I didn't bring this up, ahead of time, but I was just going through some notes and I said, oh, this is something I should bring up tonight. So the Otsego Safe is, it's suicide awareness for everyone.
Okay.
And it is a group that's organized through the Department of Health with our county. I attended their last meeting on June 11th. I know they have another one coming up in July. And, you know, what I wanted to bring to this committee's attention is that they are seeing alarming numbers of individuals going to the ER in crisis and flagged as suicidal, especially this
In
year.
Otsego County?
In Otsego County, however, these numbers are trending upwards throughout the state, okay? They are continuing to, you know, track these numbers. They're already seeing some trends though. Some of the trends that they're seeing are that it's the 20 to 49-year-old age group that has the highest rates. The oldest reported age was 92, and the youngest was only 7, which is really devastating to hear. And already that month, I guess I didn't put down my total numbers, I can get that, but already at the beginning of June, by the 11th, they had already seen 70 visits in that month, just in our county, and that was already an increase, you know, for that month. So I don't know how those numbers ended up for June, but the July meeting, I think is coming up next week, and
Do
hopefully.
you have any information on the 7-year-old?
I don't have any, we don't have personally identifying information about any
No, I
of
mean,
these, but
why the
they're all
determination
flagged as
is made.
suicidal, I don't know why though.
Yeah,
Yeah, we didn't have any information further
because
than
that's
that.
really disturbing.
It is, it's very disturbing.
A 92-year-old guy.
Yeah, so you know, because
I
they
can
had some
almost
basics, you know,
understand
those trends of like, these are the age categories, but they
Right.
pulled those out specifically because it is so disturbing, you know, and it's obviously, I think, something that deserves our attention as well.
Totally.
Yes, I think that's true.
Yeah, I wanna think more about it.
Yeah.
Ways that we can, I mean, I think that just the awareness of that is helpful in the fact that there's a group that is, you know, working to address it, but like, how do we fit in? I think it's really wonderful that the city council has a representative on in that effort, so that's awesome that you do that.
And I have the correct numbers here, I apologize.
Okay.
That's where I got 70 from, I must have pulled that from something else. It was 279 individuals already for 2024 by June 11th, and it was 21 in the first 11 days of June.
This is in Otsego County.
That is just for Otsego County.
So that's a very high percentage.
Yeah.
Wow, that 7-year-old man, that's
I know,
really.
that's the one that
That's
really
heartbreaking.
tugs on my heart.
Yeah.
They all do, but especially.
And so, what is the work of Otsego Safe? Like, this sounds like also kind of a new thing?
It is also a newer thing, and they organize because, you know, in response to, you know, the increase of numbers. So I think they've only had a handful of meetings. This was actually the first one I've been able to attend.
Okay,
But I've been keeping up on their notes. And right now they're tracking the trends, you know, and they are, you know, looking to do outreach when possible. But again, I think what they're trying to do is coalition building right now.
okay,
To get as many people, you know, to the table who have, you know, input as needed.
cool. So one of the things that, we've been having a guest from Bassett Healthcare Network come to our community wellness meetings as well. And is there anybody from Bassett involved in that?
I'm gonna have to double check.
Okay, I'm just wondering, because I think that's something that I would want to bring
I
to
would
them
like
as
to
well.
say so, but let's see, we've definitely got like Leaf, Otsego County. I'm not sure if I see anybody from, I will have to ask.
Okay.
That's a good question.
I was just curious, because the reason for the representative coming to our committee, it's a committee, I always like stop myself mid-word, because I'm like, committee, okay. So, yes, so the reason for, Caitlin coming to our committee is that Bassett is trying to be, you know, a good community partner and just kind of get more out there and understand, you know, things that are important to the community and ways that they might be able to help. And so just like hearing this, I mean, obviously this is data too that like they have because this is a Bassett facility, but you know, I'm interested to hear from them if there's anything that they
think that they could do, you know, I mean, because they do like, I mean, that being said, like, I think the first therapist that I went to was at Bassett and I had to wait like 6 months.
Yeah.
So I know that it's not, that they don't have like mental health providers that they can just like card out at an event, but, you know, I'm thinking of like how they do like mobile breast cancer screening and, they have like gender affirming care, they were gonna do something, did they do something yet, right, or no?
I don't think they came.
Okay, cause they,
Not that I remember, but they might have.
okay.
There's so many, it's hard to remember.
Yeah, it was really, yeah. But there was something where they were going to do, they have like a, I don't know, thing, like a mobile bandstand where they can
Yeah.
do like, they can have like healthcare in this thing, which is cool. And so I may be slightly mischaracterizing that based on my memory, but they were wanting to get out ahead of
Yeah.
some of these things and also just in an effort to promote like the services that they offer, because sometimes, especially with like the students who are new to the community, they may not know, you know, and so, that's interesting, especially like the age group, you know, just getting involved in.
I think SUNY has a program, like I don't know if they call it a suicide prevention program, but they have counseling, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
I think
they
they're pretty good at that.
And Bryce might be a great resource for that, you
Yeah, he
know,
would
to
know.
tell us more about that, he's really involved up there and knows what.
Yeah, I don't know about Hardwick, I don't know what they have, but
I'm not
I
sure.
know SUNY does.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that information and, yeah, we can just keep that on the agenda
Yeah.
and
And then I can report
updates
back,
and
yeah,
that would be
on any
awesome.
updates, and if there's any resources, because I see in the past, you know, they've sent some resources or trainings, things that were coming up, I'll share with the committee as well.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, I mean, any way that we can even just amplify that kind
Yeah,
of
that's what I'm
stuff.
thinking, because, you know, I know that they're working really hard to get information out, and I try to, you know, share it with like, you know, relevant parties, so now I will definitely include, you know, folks here too.
Cool, thank you. Okay, is there anything else that, and I'll open it up to you, Don, you can be our third committee member today. Is there anything else that you guys want to talk about before we?
Well, what's with the locker program?
So, okay, so, yeah, let me give you a little background. This is in response to legislation that was passed, that I had reservations about fully, about the shopping cart ordinance, that gave, well, the background behind the shopping cart ordinance was basically allowing, DPW and code enforcement and the police an opportunity to return wayward carts to either return them or dispose of them after a certain amount of time. And my take on that is that if I had every single thing I owned in a shopping cart and then someone took that cart away from me, that would be pretty devastating. And so I started to look into free community lockers, and they have other benefits, but that was the general kind of catalyst for this thinking. And so there are other communities who have free community locker programs. And so I had just begun really to identify like what those communities are and how they do it, because like oversight is obviously the biggest issue. Like they're actually not very expensive, but just who oversees them and what the rules are, and you know, how do we
You need
waive
a
ourselves of
monitor for it.
liability,
That's the
right?
problem. Because I've done stories about these. They're a
Oh,
very good idea, and if they're in a space where someone monitors it and, you know, make sure that, you know, you don't have rotten food and stuff.
yes, rotten
Or
fruit, drug
whatever,
drops,
you know,
etc.
bombs, you know,
Yeah,
they have been.
Yeah.
They can get scary pretty quickly, and that was the concern of,
Right,
obviously our
so
police chief, right,
But
was
what I
how do we
was
do
gonna
this
say,
right?
it works well, my experience was doing stories about it, it works well only if there's a monitor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's not monitored on a regular basis, then problems arise.
So,
So that that buying them is not a big expense,
No.
but making sure that
Yeah,
they're taken care of, that someone's there.
the
That's
upkeep,
the hard
the upkeep.
part.
Yeah, so, the suggestion that I had was to put them in the new transit hub facility, which I thought also made sense.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
idea
See,
that,
that's where they removed them though.
what do you mean?
They,
Yeah.
like, there used to be lockers in, the Grand Central Terminal and so on and so,
Mhm.
and that's where there was problems and they
Oh, okay.
removed them all.
Oh, keep,
They
so
put him
keeping
in-
them in the
they put him-
transport spot was.
They put them next to, or adjacent to, shelters, that kind of thing.
Oh,
Okay,
That's where it worked better.
alright.
And the
okay.
transit hub is where it was, big problem.
So that might, okay, because I'm hearing that might invite more things that you don't want coming through there, whereas, closer to a homeless shelter, it's not in transit
Right,
hub.
and then,
Yeah.
because the people
Okay.
who will use it will
So I was
be
thinking that
there.
made sense too.
So like,
first.
for example, here in Oneonta, we could, if we were gonna do something like this, it makes sense to have it by the warming
Yeah,
station,
yeah.
or, I don't exactly understand the system for homeless here, but, I'm trying to learn more about it, but whatever we do, that's where I
Yeah,
would
or,
recommend we look into it. I'm not the definitive source on this.
sure, but it sounds like you've looked,
Well,
you've had
I've done
exposure
stories
to
about
it,
it,
right?
and, yeah,
Yeah, so it was suggested to me to reach out to people from our local organizations who tend to deal with that population and just get their input on whether or not they see a benefit to it, what concerns they might have, any suggestions about placement or anything like that. So that's, I'm excited that you guys want to talk about it, and I will make that my homework for the
right.
next
There
one.
are, if you
Yeah.
research online, I'm sure you could find information about it, and there's certainly been many
Yeah.
stories written in the past about it. I didn't find some of them, whatever.
Yeah,
I'm thinking Toya from, OFO might be a good person to ask,
Okay.
she runs the homeless shelter.
okay,
Mhm.
If you want, I could reach out to her or give her contact
That
info
would be
to
awesome.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, if I were in charge, the place I would wanna put it is, in Catholic Charities in their Main Street facility, but they probably wouldn't want that.
yeah.
Have
Because
you
there's
been
someone
into
there
their?
all the time.
Yeah, I was gonna say, have you been into their
Oh, of course I have.
facility? Yeah, they're packed in there.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
no,
I mean, I didn't see
That's what I'm
all
saying.
of their seats, but it seems like they
The
have a
idea is
very
it's convenient,
limited
it's right on Main
space.
Street.
But yeah,
you know.
you're right about that.
But-
and
But I'll talk to Toya.
I'm sure they
because
wouldn't
we
want
had the yeah.
public safety building is also,
Well,
really
just to
tight on
mention
space.
that, the
Yeah,
cops don't
that's-
want it
I
either,
know.
the cops and the firefighters, they don't want
Says
it.
in a public safety.
Yeah.
yeah, but there's, all the police are there.
Exactly why we don't.
Oh,
We wipe out an entire public safety.
but they're, all right, that's a good
Sorry.
point.
Okay,
It's.
No, it's,
But we can investigate, some other,
Yeah.
some other input too,
Yeah.
and, see what,
And
yeah.
if you could figure out how other communities pay for the monitor, I think that would be an
Yeah.
important piece of information.
it depends on where we
really,
put
it should be done, but how you do it is
It's one of those things,
the
that is a
crucial
great
part.
idea, but yeah, all the things, yeah.
And actually, they
Okay.
sell lockers that are secure, but they have like bars on the front, so you can see what's inside them, which
Oh.
maybe-
If it's outside,
I was gonna
that's
say,
a
not if it's
problem.
outside,
right,
It's
I was
a-
thinking
it's-
outside.
If
it's
it's
gotta be
in your
sheltered.
location, that would,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
wouldn't
definitely
totally
thinking
eliminate,
indoors.
but it would make it more difficult, to bring in things.
Yeah,
Right.
totally,
Yeah,
yeah.
there are communities that have done it successfully, and we should investigate what they do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like that's the key really to everything, it's like, oh, we think that's a good idea, how does someone else do
Yeah,
it?
don't
if
have to
someone has already
reinvent the
done it,
wheel.
Yeah.
you don't reinvent the wheel, you at
Totally.
least look at what they've done first,
Totally.
yeah, I
Right.
totally agree.
Okay, cool, so we'll bring that back to our next one, and, so we'll, at our next meeting, I'm preloading agenda here, we will talk,
Because I'll pull up your agenda
okay,
and we will fill that right out,
cool,
and then we don't have to bother you the week before.
okay. I have actually a calendar reminder, like send the agenda, doesn't mean I do it, but I'm just like, oh yeah.
Go for it.
Okay, so we are going to work on some tobacco-free communities inspired legislation for our community. We are going to talk about the community locker program. We're going to have an update on Otsego Safe. And what am I forgetting?
community engagement and supporting community wellness.
Yeah. Thanks. Is there anything else?
Do you want police and fire,
Yes.
and then do you want codes for any zoning discussion?
Yes, that's a good idea. Thank you.
Terry, I have a question. In the paper today, there was it mentioned that there's a special council meeting on the 9th. Did you see that?
Yeah.
That wasn't on the regular schedule, was it?
We talked about it to the last strategic planning meeting.
I have it in my
So June
calendar, so
25th we
it's
said,
right.
and you should have gotten a
Yeah.
calendar invite that night.
I'm gonna miss that because I'm gonna be in Colorado.
Okay, so let me